Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. PJ Glassey, CSCS, has education and certifications, including a bachelor's in exercise science, and is a certified strength and conditioning specialist. PJ started personal training in 1987 and grew his business successfully in the following 11 years, training clients out of their homes and local gyms. With these clients' help as test subjects, PJ invented his multi protocol concept and refined it through 1998 when he founded the X Gym. PJ has been a guest expert on TV, hosted his own call in talk show on popular radio stations, and has authored many works, including local and national media articles and several books on health and fitness. PJ is the co-author of What You Need to Know About Muscle Building, 10 Top Trainers Q&A Sessions, and is the author of his own book, Cracking Your Calorie Code, which is a brain dump of most of what PJ has learned over the years through extensive research that he has done in the fields of exercise science, nutrition science, and brain science. He has also created a brain type test for people to discover their unique brain wiring and find faster results to better motivation, helping them in their health and fitness journey. PJ Glassey, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Yeah, thanks, Casey. It's great to be here.
It's great to host you. I'm so excited to chat with you about some of the things that you've learned over the years of
Mhm.
personal training. I've been fortunate enough to be able to do personal training for 2 decades now,
Wow.
coming up on 2 decades. And it's so much fun. I absolutely love it. I love the science of personal training and trying to
hmm
understand protocols and get the right program design, and also learning the art side of things and
Mm.
understanding so much of what our work is getting to know our people and being there when they don't want to work out and learning about their kids and their hobbies and all that stuff. It's just such a
Yeah,
fun profession. I feel very fortunate to be doing it for as long as I have, and I'm sure you feel the same way.
I do. Yeah, it's definitely a passion, and it's just so great to help people. That's the bottom line, is it's so satisfying to help people because you and I could both probably get better paying jobs, but we're not going to be as happy because this is the opportunity where we can really help the most people, and that's super fun.
Yeah, totally. I know how I would answer this question. I'll ask you, and I assume I know how you will answer this question. If I magic wand gave you $10 million right now, would you show up to work on Monday at 6 a.m. to train your clients?
Oh, heck yeah. I'd be there. I
Yeah,
can't
I
leave
would be
my
there too.
peeps. Yeah,
I
they're
would
they're
be there too.
friends too. Yeah, I can't
They
abandon
really are.
all of them.
They
Yeah.
really are. I made the point several times with people like friends is one level, but also for some people like it's the level of family. Like I would
hmm
strongly assert that I might know more about somebody than their spouse. Like I'm working with some of these people sometimes a few hours a week, and like the level of depth that you get to know some of your people is quite interesting and astonishing. You laugh together, you cry together, you go through so much of that. There's suffering together that it's
Bingo.
almost like you become like family with some of these people.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't think of any member at my gym who, if they asked me to help them move, I wouldn't. I would just say yes for sure. And that's kind of the true test of a friend is are they gonna be sick that day or are they gonna help you move?
Moving is a good barometer, probably right next to give me a ride to the airport level.
Yeah, right.
Totally, totally. Wow. When I think back on the things that I've learned in my career, I certainly got certified with a reputable company when I first got started. But over the years, you definitely refine your thinking on certain things. You learn different methods, and as much as you loved and appreciated the way you're trained, there's also different methodologies. And so I want to get into your personal story and the things that you were trained in, and I'm very interested and learning about the multi protocol that you've come up with. I find that very fascinating. So, how did that all evolve for you, and how have you changed your thinking with personal training for as long as you have?
Yeah, well, it all started at Seattle Pacific University when I was getting my degree in exercise science. I actually started as a psych major and then switched my senior year to exercise science. So I've got a lot of psych background too. And then when I graduated, I started personal training right away and mostly out of clients' homes. So I was driving around to, big rich mansion people with their home gyms and it just trying to help them. And it was mostly an hour, typically hour sessions, like traditional training at first, but those are really busy people and they needed to save time. And so I wanted to develop a methodology that would end up being a time hack to save them time. And they also mentioned that they didn't want to get jacked. They wanted to look and feel fit, but they wanted to have a functional kind of fitness where they can enjoy life, do active things, keep up with their kids and maybe even grandkids, and enjoy the quality of life. So I wanted to also invent something that could help them with that. And then they're at the age, 40 to 70 years old, where they've been injured and they don't want to get injured again, and they can't afford now to get injured because they're such a busy person. And so they wanted something safe. So I set out with all those goals to develop a new methodology, also something that was new and different because traditional training has been around a long time. It was invented in 1891 by Eugene Sandow, and it was mainly for the purpose of strength and bulking up. And it's great for that. It's still great for that. And I tell people that want to get jacked to do that. That's perfect for them. So, go join Gold's Gym and do bodybuilding stuff, or CrossFit is another place to go for, getting some good bulk going on, and hang around those people and do that. It's going to take a lot of time. It's a big commitment, but that's perfect. For the rest of the people that just want to do what I mentioned, then that's the methodology that I invented for those people. So it's just a different market. And my clients were my guinea pigs for the first 11 years. And then I got to the point where I had the methodology pretty well perfected, and I needed to scale myself because I was getting too busy. So opened the X Gym in 1998 and then continued to refine things. So back then, we had machines and we kind of looked like a regular gym. Now we don't. It's more functional training, body weight stuff, carpet sliders, and a lot of our own gizmos and inventions that we invented over the years, because I'm always doing research and I'm always doing experiments, and I'll never stop that. And so the program is continuing to evolve and be more effective. And that's how we got rid of the machines along the way, and we got more into the body weight stuff and our own gizmos and gadgets that we invented. My favorite is what we call the Extreme machine. Of course, it starts with an X for X Gym, and it makes people scream, and it's really extreme. So we call it the Extreme machine, and it is one of those Cybex machines that has, the arms where it's the cable machine where the arms, you can adjust them however you want.
Yeah.
And in a gym, it would have a weight stack. I took the weight stack out, I put an electric winch in there, and a pulley and a load cell and a readout. So instant biofeedback so people can tell how hard they're pulling. The trainer controls the winch. And so it's isokinetics, and it's necessarily a max rep through the entire range, but it's slow and controlled. And so we can just control where they are in the range and what they're doing, and constantly and stop it and look at the form and correct and all this kind of stuff. So it's probably the most intense thing that I've ever felt, but it's also a time hack on a time hack. I mean, our workout is already down to 21 minutes twice a week, and each exercise takes about 3 minutes, but this sucker takes about a minute and a half. Because if
Wow.
you can imagine from the get-go, max contraction, time under tension, doing that as hard as you can the entire time, you can't go more than a minute and a half. And so, but going through the range. And we also do isometrics on that. It's great for bone density. So that's the best example of the weirdest one that we have, but there's a lot of others. And it's just totally unique from any other
Wow.
kind of training program.
That sounds absolutely amazing, and I don't want to try that machine at all. It sounds really
Yeah.
tough. So yeah, that's very interesting. I had the opportunity to train somebody on a tonal. If you're familiar with kind of
Yeah.
the tonal that's got the screen and the arms.
Yep.
And I've always said, like, we had a free motion version of that machine where it's hard if you're listening and not watching to kind of imagine. But imagine if you had, it looks like a lap machine, but the arms can move inward and outward and also slide kind of up and down. And so I've always said, like, if I could choose to have one machine, it would be that one because they're so versatile. You can do so many different things in different positions. And the tonal, I was surprised at how good of quality it was because it measures every rep and gives you exactly the right amount of weight. It can
Mhm.
change in the range and give you more or less. And so this sounds like a really great way to be able to do the same in a much more kind of mechanical fashion. So I love that idea. I love that you came up with that. That's really unique and quite cool. And it's interesting that you mentioned like what your crowd is, which is what probably 98% of the people that come to see us. And
Yeah.
I would answer the same thing. Like if you're trying to be a bodybuilder, God bless you. That's awesome. I'm probably not your guy. If you want to go on a
Hmm.
vegan diet, like that's awesome. And I can give you some tips, but I'm not your guy. Like there's other
Hmm.
vegan coaches out there that can do a much better job than I would. I would send you elsewhere and try to
Hmm.
focus on the same demographic. Most people, they don't like working out. They think that they should. The idea with bodybuilding is that, yeah, you're in the gym, 5, 6 days a week. Monday is International Chest Day, and you're doing, 6 or 7 different chest exercises.
Right.
Thursday is International Bicep Day, whatever. Like you're doing all these things and you're supposed to, and people think that like, oh, I need to be working out that much to get results. And it's like, no, 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 you don't understand that there is a very distinct teeter-totter between frequency and intensity. And if you're working out all the time, you're not going to be able to work out as intensely and get the good quality workout that should actually give you the better results. So I love the 21-minute design. Can you tell us some of the key concepts and components that you like to practice when you're taking people through these workouts?
Yes. So first of all, I agree with you on the tonal, and we do a lot of online training as well. And some of our people have the tonal. It's an amazing machine. Highly recommend it. Yeah, can do a
I
lot
was
of stuff with it.
impressed. I
Yeah,
was
very
impressed.
impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a kind of a light version of that coming out. It's not out yet, but we have pre-ordered AMP Fitness, AMP, AMP Fitness. And so look into that. I can't endorse it yet because ours hasn't shown up, but it looks pretty amazing with, really quick resistance settings and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, something to check into.
That is amazing. I'll write that down and check that out. The first place I went to that I was training my client on my tonal, I was like, why am I training you on my replacement? This thing counts to 12 better than I do. Like, clearly get a replacement. But anyway, I'm glad you noticed the same thing about tonal. I really like it. I thought it was good.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. So the question is on our methodology.
Yeah, yeah. What kind of key concepts do you practice when you're doing this 20-minute workout?
It's really based on time under tension. So all our stuff is time under tension with no rests. So a lot of people, I think, are familiar with super slow. That's kind of the same thing, time under tension. So they don't let you take breaks between the reps like with traditional training. And if you think about a traditional rep, you're going to, do these fast ballistic motions. And if you go full extension like a lot of them do, you get a rest. And all the muscle cell needs is a quarter second to refuel. And so if you stop anywhere in the range without load on the muscle, without the muscle contracting, it's refueling. Well, with my methodology, it's time under tension. The muscle never gets a chance to refuel. It's always burning fuel. And we keep that time under tension going until complete muscle failure. And so the muscle cell has run out of fuel. It's emptied out. And it's really only then that the true magic happens. That's like the unicorn zone, where the muscle is empty. The gas tank is gone. All the fuel's gone, and you burn off the fumes. Only then does it see a need to change. It'll adapt with other resistance, even if it's intense, but only when it fails does it really see a convincing need to change. Because if you leave some fuel in the tank of that muscle cell at the end, it says, I could do that. I was fine. Why change? But if you empty it out and you make it fail, it says, wow, okay. So and so it assumes that you just moved to a place that is full of tigers and lions, and now it has to adapt and change to protect you because something urgent really just happened. So that's what our base is with the time under tension. That's the means to get to the end of complete muscle fatigue, but it's also beneficial in itself as time under tension because that gives you endurance. So you're building endurance results with the time under tension until you get to failure, and then you're strength training, and then you get the strength results. Now, when a muscle cell is trained exclusively with endurance, it wants to get smaller for efficiency. bring the capillaries closer to the nucleus. When the muscle cell is trained for strength only, then there's no time under tension, but just, power moves. Then it wants to get bigger for tensile strength so it doesn't tear, stuff like that. And so when you're doing it exclusively endurance training, you end up like a marathon runner with really thin muscle fibers. When you do exclusively power strength training, you end up like a bodybuilder with big muscle fibers. But when you're doing both at the same time, like we do, then what happens is the muscle cell doesn't change, it gets denser. So it won't get smaller because we're doing strength training at the end. It won't get bigger because we're endurance training up to that point. So it stays about the same. There's some size increase, but not a ton, enough for toning and definition, but not enough for bulking. But it certainly gets denser. So if you're walking through the forest and you dug up a petrified branch, and then you found another fresh branch that was the exact same size, the petrified branch is going to be a lot heavier and denser than the fresh branch. That's kind of how we are. So our muscles get denser as new proteins and things get put in the cell, but without significant bulk size increase. And then that's how we also get stronger and gain muscle mass or muscle weight without bulking up because we're doing both endurance and strength training at the same time.
Wow. That's fabulous and very well explained. That's almost word for word how I explain it to people as far as the muscle failure. Like if you have 10 level strength, for example, and you go to 9, the body thinks, okay, great. We're able to do 9. We're already at 10. There's no real need to change anything. I don't think a lot of people realize that the body is so lazy and loath to do more work than it needs to because of the way we evolved. It's not going to get stronger if it doesn't need to get stronger. It's always adapting to that. And so it's only when you push up against that edge and say like, no, your body doesn't understand whether you're on the extreme machine or you're, arm wrestling a grizzly bear. It doesn't really know the difference. It just understands that effort, and that's paramount. So that's fantastic. As you're doing these exercises, is there a target time or a number of sets or reps or anything like that you're also trying to monitor?
Yeah, typically it depends on which method we're using. So we're trying to get to about 7 reps on most of the methods, but on a couple of the methods, we're only getting to 4 or 5 reps max. And an example would be the method that people might be able to understand if they're familiar with super slow is our 7-second method. So it's 7-second concentric phase and 7-second eccentric phase. So 7-second smooth motion, 7 seconds on the way up, 7 seconds on the way down, and no stop at the top, no stop at the bottom, constant motion. The top is low enough that it's still, your muscle is contracting. So it's never off, there's never an offload with momentum or because you're locking out. So you're keeping the muscle in contraction the whole time. That's the case with all of the methods, but that would be the first one. And so with that one, we would go to 7 reps. So a 14-second set, 7 reps is, around 2 minutes. Then we get to do our splinter techniques. So hopefully we're going to hit failure, fatigue somewhere in there. Then we keep going. So we're actually going beyond failure with the splinter techniques. And by that, I mean, maybe it's pulses, maybe you're changing the range, going perpendicular to the main range of motion. Maybe the trainer gets in and they're pushing a little bit for extra negative or something like that. We have 26 to choose from, but so you have one for every letter of the alphabet. And then those splinter techniques will be used among all the different methods. But another example of a method, instead of slow and smooth, 7 seconds up, 7 seconds down, ratchets is stops. 7 stops to get to the top. And then 7 stops coming down to the bottom, again, staying within time under tension, never offloading or resting. And then we have the Torrendo method where it's a slow start, accelerate up, fast finish. So the top would look like this. In a traditional gym, the top looks like this. At our gym, the top looks like this. So we're stay in tension. And then down 2 stop, up 1 stop, down 2 stop, up 1 stop, down 2 stop. And so those are three examples of the seven that we have. But the other purpose of that is to train their brain and nervous system because your brain has to focus. We can't do our reps and talk about stuff or watch the TV like you see in 24-hour fitness, people doing all the time. We have to focus. So it's actually a form of meditation. Prefrontal cortex is highly engaged because you have to concentrate on controlling that motion, and your nerves have to work really hard. Well, what's two and what's one and what's a full stop or what's the ratchet and how smooth, smooth, smooth. Don't speed it up here where it's hard, keep it slow, that kind of thing. And so it's training the brain intensively and the nervous system intensively. So people get brain benefits as well as nervous system benefits, coordination benefits. People get better at sports as opposed to bodybuilding, for instance, that is uncontrolled repetitions, fast motions, ballistic reps that you don't have to think about. And if you ever want a good example of that, ask any bodybuilder, professional for sure, because they're spending all day doing this uncontrolled motion kind of stuff. Ask any bodybuilder to do any sport that they haven't done before, and they're a complete oaf because they've detrained their nerves all day, every day. But you go with sports specific training or our style or something, anything that's controlled where you have to focus and you have to think about your movement, functional training, those people are going to get better at sports. And if they try a sport they've never tried before, they're going to be better than average at it on the very first day.
Wow. Okay, that's fascinating. Okay, so if you're listening and not watching, we're going to link up to YouTube. This would be a really good one to watch on YouTube to see
Mm,
what you were demonstrating. As far as that what most people, if they're listening, they couldn't see is you holding a weight overhead like a shoulder press at the very
yeah.
top. You're actually stacked on your skeletal system, and so
Hmm.
thus you're kind of resting. Versus like even if you just go down a few degrees, like you
Yeah.
demonstrated, you're much more transferring the load into the muscles where you're going to get those results.
Right.
So we've mentioned super slow several times. The book Body by Science that came out by Dr. Doug McGuff and John Little
Mm,
completely changed the way I thought about strength training my people. And I love the principles that they discuss in the book. And I agree with them.
mhm,
I love the progressive overload, how you're systematically tiring out all the different muscle fibers by moving slowly to muscle failure. You're working slow twitch, intermediate twitch, fast twitch muscle fibers. The
mhm.
issue that I have with a lot of my clients is that I can do that kind of workout. I can do that. I can break it up during the week. If I don't have time, I can go do a set or two here or there. I can do a set to failure. I don't need a ton of variety. I can just go and do the workouts I need. I understand that I'm using the gym to make myself strong. And then I'm going to go out and do other things that I enjoy. I'm going to mountain bike. I'm going to play ice hockey. I'm going to do those in the context of mountain biking and ice hockey because I just love to do them. And I use the gym to make me strong to do either one of those things,
Mhm,
ideally. But people do get bored. And I meant to look this up.
mhm,
I'm sure you know this study. I remember this study being cited, and I thought it was a really good illustration. They took two groups of people. I can't remember how long it was. It was long enough, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that. They gave one group the exact same workout program. They gave the other group various different workouts.
mhm,
And the first group doing the same workout got the best results, but they got bored. And the second group, who had a variety of workouts, they didn't get as good results, but they stayed more connected and enjoyed the workouts a lot more. Again, maybe you know the study, maybe you don't. If I find it, I'll link it in the show notes. But that's, I think, a good illustration of what we talked about earlier, like the art and science of training. I agree with the principles of body by science, but if I just do that, I'm lacking in a way that I can vary things up. And this is where I think your multi-protocol is absolutely fascinating. So can you tell us about how you ride those two lines, understanding that the principles are the principles and you need to follow them. However, you can also still make this exciting to make sure your clients stay engaged.
Absolutely. Yeah, first of all, Doug McGuff needs to get some sort of presidential medal of honor because he has done so much for the industry to open people's minds to something different, something new. And so just so much, so many kudos to that guy. Um, but the thing with what you're describing here is the mental boredom. And research shows that after about 6 weeks, the brain gets bored with the routine. And it's really hard to put 100% intensity into what you're doing when the brain is bored because the brain's controlling that intensity. So that's why We have, well, 7 is my favorite number. Okay, so I try to make if it works, I try to make 7 incorporated into as much as possible. It's God's favorite number, so it's my favorite number. And it does incorporate really well into a lot of our stuff. And so what we do is after 7 weeks or about 14 workouts, we change the exercises, but we also change the method. Super Slow is great at changing exercises, and they do have a core of certain number of machines that they use, and like we used to do back in the late 90s until we started to get away from that more into functional. But and it works really well. But after a while, the nervous system, body, and the brain start to get bored. So, oh, here's the leg press machine again. And so then you can plateau. You can either mentally plateau, but you can also physically plateau as the nerves know it and learn it. And so if you mix up the exercises like most people do, which is great, but also the method, how you're doing the rep itself, giving the brain and the nerves something completely new to work on, and you're mixing both of those up, then the brain can't get bored, and the nervous system has a really hard time getting bored too. Also, the muscle innervation phase lasts between 4 to 7 weeks. And that's the phase that you have to get through first before hypertrophy takes place, before that phase starts. And so we're also trying to keep our people in the innervation phase most of the time to keep them out of the hypertrophy phase because that's not what they want. So it's really customized for our people. The 40 to 70 year age group is the biggest part of our bell curve. We have people in their 20s and people in their 90s, but the biggest part is 40 to 70 because those are the busy people. Those are the people that want 21 minutes twice a week because they don't have time or they don't want to put time into working out. And so those are the people that also are past the whole phase in life of getting jacked. They don't care about that anymore. They want to look and feel fit, want to be defined and toned, but not jacked anymore. And so we're keeping them in the innervation phase to keep them out of the hypertrophy phase. So it's more intensive nerve training, and that's another reason that we get more muscle density than bulk.
Oh, fascinating. Okay, very well explained as well. The facility that I train my people out of, if you enjoy different machines, you would love this place. This guy is like a connoisseur for machines, and some of these, it's like when you want to go do a leg press, you have your pick between like 15 different unique leg presses that are all different, and some of them are like the only ones of that kind in the state. They
That's
have like a
great.
50-year-old like chest pullover Nautilus machine that works on
Oh
chains.
yeah.
They've got a lot of the multi-load type of machines and the different cam sizes that they talk about in
Mm,
Body by Science and that
mm,
Nautilus made. And so I'm
hmm
wondering, like, is equipment important? Do people need to consider, like, will they only get the best results on certain machines? Do they need to use weights versus resistance bands, or is pretty much anything game to be able to, use as a tool to be able to get these results that you're talking about?
Everyone's different in their physiology and in their brain, how their brain is wired, their goals, what motivates them, and all that stuff. So there are some people that just love using the same machines for 20 years. Great. If it keeps them in it, and there's variations you can do on the same machine, but they're really motivated by that to see, the pin go lower and lower on that weight stack and to master it and better. And so it really, really depends on the person. I'm just more into functional fitness. Machines are guiding your motion and in at least some way. And so I like to be outside of that into more free motion stuff with, well, you know what TRX is, and a lot of people here
Yeah.
listening know what a TRX system is. And we have our own version of that, but we're using climbing ropes instead of straps, and we're using a prusik knot to quickly adjust up and down on that rope for the handles. And so there's a little bit of stretch in the climbing rope, and then the prusik knot is super quick, and they're hanging from the ceiling, so there's no the TRX has the cam buckle where you can adjust that, and then there's another one up top where you can adjust the height. Well, ours is just a knot. You just push it or pull it, and boom, you're there. So it's a lot quicker, which we need for our workout. And the climbing rope is a little bit more forgiving because a little bit of a stretch. So we have a lot of innovations and changes on things like that too. But that's the ideal example of functional training where you're not guided by a, a axle or a guide rod or something like that that a machine has.
Yeah. Okay. Very well explained. I like that. I was doing deadlifts with one of my clients, and we were using, heavier weights, and it was bothering her lower back. And we learned that if we switched the exercise and did resistance band, that worked a little bit better because
Mhm.
as you're in the phase where you're the most compromised, the resistance band is completely unloaded, and you're gaining resistance as you're gaining mechanical advantage. That was much better for her back and much more effective where we wanted her to feel that
Yep.
exercise. But it's like you said, there's trade-offs. Now we don't objectively know if she's doing more or less. If she takes up,
Mhm.
1/2 centimeter more of the band underneath her feet, that changes the weight. And so you don't
Mhm.
really know whether she's getting stronger or not. Where, yes, on a weight stack, you have objective results. The goal of all of this is to get stronger. You want to objectively get stronger. And so there are pros and cons to all of that. So I think that's really well explained. And it's nice to have all of that stuff on the table so that you have the variety. You've got different things, and like you said, people's preferences play into that really well. So I think that's really smart. And yeah, it
Mhm.
sounds like you guys are doing some really innovative things with how you're
Mhm.
setting up your machines. I like it.
Yeah, and for that same reason that you mentioned, we also use tubing a lot. So that's one of our huge pieces of equipment that we use all the time.
Got it.
Yeah. So for those
Yeah.
reasons.
Very cool. Okay, going back to Body by Science, there's only a select few exercises. He calls them the big five. I kind of have mine that I call the big six. And I like to vary the method, but I like to kind of capture, especially if I'm doing like you, like a total body workout, twice a week. I like to capture that movement in some way during the exercise and then add on ancillaries or whatever I want to. Is there anything you're thinking about when you're thinking about choosing your exercise selection every 7 months, 7 weeks, excuse me, you're changing up the exercises. Are you thinking like balance between pushing and pulling? Are you thinking about a completely different modality in the same movements? Like, how do you think about the actual exercise selection?
Yeah, it's always a full body workout, and depending on what the member goals are, is how we design it. So a lot of them will want to do some more endurance and cardio stuff, and we can do that with strength training because when you get to a certain point, failure at the end, your heart rate's spiked. It's really high, maybe even close to maximal. If that person has an intense enough personality and they can put enough into it, they may get close to max heart rate at the end of that 3-minute exercise. And so then we stop and we go over to the next whatever it is, and we start exercising again, and with the new exercise, the next one on the list, and then the heart rate's still coming down even after we start that, but then it starts to get intense and it levels off, and now it's the heart rate's coming back up. And we do that 5 to 7 times for the workout, all mostly compound stuff. And so by the end of the session, if we were to graph their heart rate on a piece of paper, it would look like interval training. As far as the heart and lungs are concerned, it is, and they will get cardio out of it. And so what I tell people is the kind of cardio you're going to get from your strength training here is going to be such that if you are now pulling up the rear of the pack when you're on a hike with your friends, after a few months, you're going to be in the front of the pack on the hike with your friends. Now, if you want more than that, we're going to have to put more cardio stuff into your program, like our Jacob's ladder or our rope machine or something like that that we throw in there. But most people are fine with being at the front of the pack. They don't want to necessarily leave the pack in the dust, but if they do, we have something for them for that. But it really depends on the person. Now, the other thing is we can also give them a little bit more cardio benefit on how we design the program. So if we start with a nice compound leg exercise, then we go to a nice compound upper body exercise. Then we go back to a lower body exercise. Then we go back to an upper body exercise. Now we're shunting blood upper to lower, which is harder on the heart, which is better on the heart. But we're also coaching people between exercises on getting that heart rate down. So while we're walking over to the next exercise, we're focusing on breathing, exhaling stress and tension, dropping the shoulders, relaxing the neck and upper back, feeling the relief and the release, trying to get that heart rate down because we're trying to get as high a spike, of course, in fatigue at the end of the exercise, but between exercises and while we're starting the first exercise that doesn't start out very hard because the resistance and the fatigue has to build with time, we're also during that time trying to get the heart rate down as much as possible because it's the change in heart rate that matters the most for cardio fitness improvement. And that's why interval training is so much more effective than steady state, where you got this warm up and then you've got this level off for a really long time that you're kind of holding back because you don't want to push because you want to go a really long time. And then there's the cool down at the end. And the way I tell people to visualize this is draw that heart rate workout on a piece of paper. You're going to have a slope up and then a flat line and then a slope down at the end. Now, draw interval training on a piece of paper and it looks like this. Now pretend those are strings. Stretch out the traditional cardio and it's going to go about to here. Stretch out the interval string and it's going to go way out to here. Well, that's the benefit that you can expect to get from it, not just from your cardio, but also the fat burning benefit after you're done.
Wow, awesome. I absolutely love that. I have been in so many facilities where I see the same people year over year, and they are on the treadmill or they're running by me, by my lake,
Yeah.
and they are huffing and puffing, and they're in that steady state, again, quote unquote cardio, what they think is the very best for them. And I can't judge them based on what their goals are. I have no idea what they're training for, if they're training to run, if they're training to bike, but I can tell you that they do a tremendous amount of consistent work year over
Mhm,
year. I see the same
mhm.
people and their bodies look exactly the same. And the
Yep.
number of times that I want to just stop somebody and say, yo, like, I love that you're doing a lot of work, but
Mhm.
would you like to trade some of this work to actually get some results in your body? What if I told you I could
Yeah.
make your body weight, body fat percentage be 5 points lower, your body weight be 20 pounds less? I'm
Mhm,
willing to believe that probably 95% of those people would probably take that trade. They're just
mhm.
doing the wrong thing that's not helping them out. It's so sad.
Yeah, it is. It's really sad. And it's just it hurts us to see people wasting their time. Now, then again, some of those people, if they the small minority of those people, if they were approached with that scenario, they would turn it down because they just like the zen of being there
Yeah,
and it's great for their brain. They don't really care, how they look or what their body's doing. They just do it for brain benefits and more power to them. That's great. Whoever is getting off the couch, more power to you. Yeah.
agreed. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think
Hmm.
there's better ways of doing it. But yes, if that's what you enjoy, as long as you understand, like if you have the
Hmm.
information and you're choosing to do that, awesome. Like you said, more power to you. So yeah, I love
Hmm.
that. You also use a tool and have used a tool for a very long time that I adore. I worked with for over a decade in my career. I got to train other trainers on how to use it, and that is metabolic carts. What
Hmm.
has been your experience in using metabolic assessments in your practice? Is it something you use very frequently? Are there certain situations when you find that it's really helpful? Like, what has been your experience using that as a tool?
I think it's great for people who want something really specific. And I don't use it a lot because it's kind of our Pinot unit is kind of a pain in the butt to use. And when it works, when it's consistent, it's awesome. And people get really great feedback. But whether they're really going to use that for their training or not is kind of on the fence. And it takes a lot of time for me, it takes a lot of time for them. And so if it's somebody who has really specific goals and justifies, great. But what I typically do with people, if they want to know a gauge, starting point, baseline, and then compare to later, I just put them on our Carol bike. And I have them do, the 3 rides so the AI and the bike can get to know them. And then we do the fitness test. And then we can get a ballpark. It's not nearly as accurate as Pinoe, but we can get a ballpark. And that's really all most people need. And then later, 3 months down the road, we can get another ballpark and we can see the change. It's pretty repeatable. Maybe the accuracy isn't fantastic, but it's pretty repeatable. So at least we can compare before and after kind of stuff. And then we also have the Embody 570, where they can stand on that and get a pretty accurate measurement of body composition. So between those two things, it's great. But for super accuracy and for certain people, then we will use the Panoe unit.
Got it. Well said. I like that. We also use an in-body. I've used the 570 in the past, and I kind of describe it as like this is a blunt instrument that can show directionality. If you're using this
Mhm.
periodically, every other week, once a month, like there's going to be outlier measurements, but it's going to show your direction, and that's where it's helpful. It's much less helpful, if you're doing it every single day, you're doing it way too frequently. Like I could run a resting metabolic test on somebody to find their baseline calorie burn. I could probably do it 5 times in a day and get 5 different measurements based on what's going on. It's just, it will
Yeah,
give you an idea of what's going on. And I'm not
right.
sure if you had this. And one other thing too that I agree with you completely. Like it wouldn't necessarily change the advice that I would give to somebody once we got their numbers and find out their, fat oxidation rates and all that stuff. The advice at the end of the day would kind of just be the same anyway. So
Mhm.
nice as you described it, as like this will give you some data and some numbers to look at and give you a benchmark, but you can kind of do this without using it. I found that the MAF heart rate, the 180 minus your age for maximum aerobic function, with a few caveats, can work really well for a lot of people to get them in
Mhm.
a ballpark of what they did with fat burning. And I'm curious to know, did nutrition ever play a part in what you learned using, some of these metabolic systems, including Panoe? Like I learned back in 2012, based on a coach that was in Colorado, that he was getting endurance athletes to compete at even the highest levels and never bonk by changing their fat burning, by changing their diet. And that's where the work of like Finney and Volek came in, and they were using low carbohydrate or ketogenic diets in athletes. And once they got adapted, their fat burning rates were so high, they would preserve glucose and glycogen and burn predominantly fat. Did you come across any of that kind of stuff in your experience?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'm keto myself. And if I remember, I try to be cyclic keto to come off it once a week because I've been keto for over 10 years. And that's not good to be really strict keto for more than a year. You got to start going cyclic just so your body remembers how to burn carbs. Because most people are fat burners and they don't, or the most people are carb burners because 85% of the people you see walking around outside are sugar burners because they're high carb diet and their bodies have kind of forgotten how to burn fat. It doesn't do it very well because it's so used to. And then when they start getting low on carbs, they get really hungry and they go eat more carbs because the body's like, hey, this is our primary fuel. But then a keto person, now they're converted over to fat burning. But if they stay in that too long, day after day, month after month, then the same thing can kind of happen to them. The body can kind of get crappy at burning carbs. It never forgets completely how to burn one or the other, but it can get crappy at burning one or the other. And so that's why cyclic keto is so good, to come out and remind your body how to do, because all the cells are a hybrid engine. They're always burning fat and they're always burning carbs. And so a truly metabolic efficient person is going to be good at both. And that's important to be good at both. Now, for athletes, if they're ultra endurance, like a marathoner or beyond, fat burning is a great way to go. If it's more of like an athlete who's doing um, sprint triathlons, or me with my main sport was tower running, and I'm still coaching a lot of people on that. And that's, where you're running up the inside stairwell of skyscrapers. And I was the top five in the USA for 10 or for 5 of my 10 years that I was doing that.
Wow.
But during that time, I was medium carbs, but not low carb because that is a more of a strength and explosive sport. It's a gravity sport. You're going against gravity. It's a vertical sport. And when I switched to keto at the end of most of my competitive races, I slowed down. And for instance, the Columbia Tower in Seattle is the tallest building we have. And that's technically 69 floors, but it runs like a 72 floor building. And my best time up that was 8.5 minutes. But when I switched over to keto, I couldn't get faster than 9.5 minutes.
Wow.
And yeah, I needed the carbs. But then if I loaded up, and it only took a couple 100 grams the day before, then I'm back down to 8.5 minutes. So it's a huge difference. Depends on the sport. It really depends on the sport. I prefer to be slower upstairs now and be keto because the benefits are amazing. The brain and the energy, and I don't have to worry about the hunger, and there's no ups and downs, sugar highs and lows, and it serves me perfectly for what I want in my life. It keeps my body lean and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Same thing probably with carnivore people. They're essentially keto as well. It's just more protein, and same kind of philosophy.
Yeah. I love that. That makes me want to rethink my own kind of strategy because I experienced what you're saying. Like I've been carnivore for 6 years. I had a cheat a few weeks ago, and dude, 2 days. I feel terrible for 2 days. My anxiety comes back. I'm
Yeah.
I'm slower on the ice. I'm making stupid decisions. I can feel my brain is not. It's just little things like I'm just like turning over the puck or whatever. And like I think like
Hmm.
okay, so my strategy should be more strict carnivore and
Hmm.
fast during those games. So I'm accessing fat and burning it. And if I give up,
Yep.
my top 3%, 5% of performance, I'm
Mhm.
still getting all those benefits that you mentioned. I wonder if I would be better served by adding in the carbohydrates more frequently, so it's not kicking my butt as much as it does when I bring them back in, and I get
Bingo.
more used to that. Yeah, I think that's a really good strategy. Um,
Absolutely. And when you do that, when you do have carbs and it makes you feel crappy, that's an indication that your body is kind of forgetting how to burn carbs.
yeah, yeah.
But
I
we're
wonder about
hybrid
that.
engines, yeah. So
Yeah,
it's good to, and it doesn't take much. For you, it would probably be 50 to 70 grams once a week, just to remind your body how to do it.
yeah, that's a really good idea. I love that. I love the stair running, by the way. Next time you go to that building and run the stairs, call me. I'll do it with you. And if I'm not there, if I'm a little late, you can just start without me.
Yeah, right.
That sounds incredible. I heard you mention this on another podcast. I think this is incredibly wise and something I also might want to incorporate with my people. When you're onboarding somebody, you do talk about their nutrition. I do believe that even though you're keto, you're kind of diet agnostic, right? You understand that lots of different things work for different people,
Mhm.
and you're not putting everybody on a ketogenic diet, correct?
Oh gosh, no. I
Yeah,
put hardly anyone. It's so hard to do. Carnivore and keto is so hard to do,
yeah,
and it's the compliance is awful for somebody that already doesn't have a good level of discipline. So I usually put people on the Mediterranean diet first, and then if they can do that really well for 3 months, then we might talk about paleo. And then if they
yeah.
can do that so I'm phasing them into a more extreme carnivore or keto, depending on what they can do and what is realistic. But then also, that's why I developed my brain type test is to help people with struggles that they have. Because they'll come back and they'll say, I'm trying to do what you told me, but I just can't, I can't figure it out. And then so I put them through the brain type test, and then so I can understand their brain wiring better on how to better coach them.
I love that. And the thing you mentioned on this podcast I listened to is a screening tool, which is really just essentially if somebody's coming to you saying, "I want to change my nutrition, what should I eat?" It's not a handout of go shop for these foods and eat these foods.
Yep.
It's track your food, everything that you eat and drink for 1 week,
Yep.
and you said exactly what I would have expected that this is going to phase out pretty much everybody. There's only going to be a small
Hmm.
percentage of people who are
Hmm.
actually willing to do that
Hmm.
exercise, which it's a little bit of work, but if you're willing to change your diet, you should be willing to track your food for a week. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, I just think a majority of people would not go through that exercise. And then it's like, well, changing your diet is going to be much harder than even just tracking your food. So I love that as a screening tool. I think that's
Hmm.
very wise.
Yeah, well, I'm the time hack guy, and I just don't want to waste anybody's time, including my own. So when someone comes to me and they say, "Hey, I really want to change my diet and tell me exactly what to eat," and I'll do it for sure. And they mean it when they say it, but then doing it is actually another thing. So I've found that with those people, I hand them, I, I sit down with them and I say, "Oh, well, what's your pattern? Tell me a specific, typical day for you." And so then I can give some specific recommendations for swaps and substitutions and things like that. And then I send them off with that, and they'll do it for a week or two maybe, but then and so then it doesn't work. And they, they, um, I sometimes use the brain type test as the tool, but that person has wasted their time meeting with me. And then I also wasted mine. And so
Yeah.
that's why the food log is such a great pre-screen because those people that are willing to do a week's worth of food and drink everything that passes their lips in a really strict way. And to be really honest, those people are probably going to also stick with the program that I make for them.
Love that. Yeah, I absolutely love that. PJ, this has been probably one of the most selfish podcasts I've ever done. I've learned so much. If I've got to pay your hourly rate to do this interview today, you just let me know, just bill me. And I would love it if we could deep dive into more of the mental stuff. We're just barely scratching the
Mhm.
surface on it. If we could do
Yeah,
another interview where we go into greater detail on that, I
yeah,
think that would be
totally.
a fabulous and very
Hmm.
helpful episode. But
Hmm.
before we do, could you tell us just a little bit more about the brain type test and
Hmm.
how that can help people?
Yeah. Well, it all started in the year 2000 when my mom was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. I've always been a huge research nerd, just devouring the studies. And that's what the best thing I got out of my exercise science degree was how to read research and how to figure out which is the good studies and the bad studies. And most of the ones that we see on the web or on, Muscle and Fitness magazine are crappy studies. So it's trying to find the good ones. And so when I dove into that brain, I was already diving into exercise science research and nutrition research, but now I dove into brain to try to help mom. Back then, we didn't know enough about Alzheimer's, so couldn't really help her. And so in 2005, she passed, but I never stopped being that research nerd on the brain because it was so fascinating. And one of the things that came out of all that was a brain type test that I developed, and it's 20 questions. And then people figure out their brain type from this test. And based on what type they are, they get half a dozen brain training techniques that they can use. And the brain training techniques are customized for their brain type. So they're going to make the most sense for their brain wiring, and they're going to work the best for their brain wiring. And when I was developing this test and I was having people take it as, test subjects to try to get the validity of it. One of them was my daughter. And so she got the results back and she goes, "Wow, this is totally me." Because part of it is, describes you kind of like Myers-Briggs or one of those personality tests, but this is more focused towards nutrition and fitness. And she goes, "But it's probably just using words that are general enough that this would make sense for everybody, and anybody would say that." And so I looked up my chart and I said, "Well, here's the opposite brain wiring of you. So look at this results page and tell me what you think." And she looked at it and she goes, "Oh yeah, that's totally not me. That is opposite of me." So she was more convinced then. But so people can see the specific things that they should do when they come across a speed bump or roadblock that's getting in their way and frustrating them. See, personal trainers are great at helping people and they want to help people and they give people advice based on what they think works. And mostly what they think works is because they've found it themselves and they know it works for themselves and they think that's going to be great for everybody else because it works for them. They don't understand there's lots of different brain types out there. And so they're going to give their advice to their member or client, and there's a 20% chance it's going to be great. But there's an 80% chance that client is going to come back to them and say, I just can't do it. I don't know what's wrong with me. And then they respond with, "Well, just have more willpower, suck it up and just bear down and do it. If you really want these results, you're just going to do it." And some will gut it out and maybe get some results, but it's with a lot of effort. Or they could do the brain type, figure that out, see their client's wiring, give them what they need, what makes sense to them that is going to work, and then with a lot less effort, get a lot better results. So
That
that's the
sounds
purpose of it. Yeah.
that sounds amazing. Yeah, that sounds amazing. Well, we're definitely going to have to deep dive into that. I want to definitely give that the time that it deserves if you have the time, and especially if you don't
Sure.
charge me for it. I really appreciate it. This has been fascinating. I've definitely learned a lot. I love your style and ways of making this very pragmatic for people, while also following those principles we talked about earlier and helping people get the best results. So I've thoroughly enjoyed our time, PJ. I really, really appreciate you and taking the time to be here. Where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you and your work?
Xgym.com, xgym.com. All my stuff's on there. Um, so the links and blog posts and all sorts of stuff and book and everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very, very easy. And the physical location is in the Seattle area, correct?
Yeah. So we're about 10 minutes from Seattle. We're in the Kirkland area. So South Kirkland, North Bellevue. And we do a ton of online training. And we also have an app that people use worldwide.
Awesome. Yeah, but we can find everything on that website. We'll be sure to
Yeah.
link that down below. PJ, thank you again for your time today. And thank you for explaining everything so clearly and concisely. And I look forward to chatting with you again. This is a really, really great episode, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate you, and your willingness to learn and to share with other people is really awesome. So thank you so very
Oh,
much
yeah.
for
My
taking
pleasure.
time to be on our show today. We really, really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun. It was great.
So did I. It was great.
Yeah.
And this has been another episode of Boundless Body.